Hey, remember when Need for Speed was good? No, not good. I mean really fucking good. Now, I've made a couple short videos about a few games I love. But when I talk about stuff that riles me up, well, have a seat. Need for Speed was once a franchise worth actually giving a shit about. It was one of those racing series that offered less in the way of realism and touted itself as a king of car customization. The racing itself was raw, archaic, fun on its own, and doubled as a means to seeing your works of art blaze through the streets of whatever city was at your mercy. But that series has declined. In an era of marketing to the masses instead of a niche, where large publishers try to wring every IP they own for what it's worth, Need for Speed has become a chore. Ask any ardent fan when this downward spiral began, and they'll squarely point at NFS Pro Street. Even between Pro Street and the here and now, we've had crests among the numerous valleys, and those crests mean nothing in front of the swaths of alternatives we have. The shift titles tried to blend arcade with simulation, but we already had Forza at that point. Hot Pursuit 2010 and Most Wanted 2012 showed promise, but lacked any form of meaningful customization. The run was interesting while it lasted. Rivals was actually my favorite of this new generation of NFS games, up until that point, but sorely deficient in multiple areas in terms of both mechanics and world design. Then came the reboot. The reboot. The we're listening and going back to our roots reboot. And what a reboot it was. Need for Speed 2015 was the definition of all look but no substance. And I'm not saying you can't enjoy it, I'm just saying you had better options. It's pretty to look at, sure. Customization and basic tuning were back in full force, and it looked like we were in for a treat. Only to find out that the handling was wonky, drifting was unpredictable, the main camera was nausea-inducing, there was no dash cam, no manual shifting, rubber band AI worse than ever, and puzzlingly enough, no day-night cycle, despite the fact that it looked absolutely gorgeous when editing the lighting in. Not to mention, always online. Ghost games, did Rivals teach you nothing? Do you think I'm being too harsh? All the stuff I've mentioned are either industry standard or things Need for Speed has done before. If you weren't aware, well now you are. And coming to the cutscenes, sure, they're cringy, but I've seen worse, and from the same series. I don't play these games for the plot. That's like playing Gone Home for the gameplay. The main and only reason I played it was the joy of customizing a ride, upgrading it, tuning it to my liking, and strutting my swag on the streets. I am not saying that again. Severely flawed? Yes. Did I find it tolerable? Just barely. But there was clear room for improvement. Fans provided feedback, and Ghost Games had the intel to work with. We, the consumers, told them what we wanted. Come 2017, what did we get? Did somebody say loot boxes? Ah, chap, I heard you like buying an engine to up your horsepower. How's about we sells you a gearbox card that improves your jumping? No, put that the fuck away! Yes, EA is trash, etc, ad nauseam. The fiasco is over. We all know they done goofed, and that EA had a major role to play in this. But if I wanted to shit on microtransactions, I'd be here all day. So microtransactions and single-player experiences are straight up bullshit, end off. What puzzles me more is the way they implemented it. Take Assassin's Creed for instance. Ubisoft has empties to boost your progression. Why you'd pay to skip out on the game I don't know, but you can play just fine without them. Anything the empties offer, you can earn conveniently via gameplay. And that's the key word here. Conveniently. See, a lot of publishers push this bullshit statement saying, "Oh, but you can unlock via gameplay." You say that to my face when I'm grinding through Act 4 in Shadow of War, Warner Bros. It's a right pain in the ass. And Payback implements its empties in the form of speed cards. It's funny they call them that because they just slow down progression. In any normal racing game, if you wanted a better engine, you'd buy a better engine. If you wanted to better your suspension, you'd switch parts. You with me so far? Good. Now in Need for Speed Payback, if you want better brakes, you spin a roulette wheel and hope to God you get the part you need with the perks you need. Each card has 1 to 3 perks, and if you want better performance, you'll want higher level cards with more perks. The most say you have in the matter is guaranteeing either the part you want, the brand it's from, or one of the perks it contains. And how do you procure such goodies, you ask? Well, you get a random one at the end of each event, or you can purchase the cars you want if it just so happens to be in stock at a parts shop. Scrapping cars you don't want yields tokens, and you can spin the wheel of depression for just 3 tokens to maybe get a card that's not completely fucking useless, god damn it! Alternatively, loot boxes! The solution to no one's problem! The kicker, any parts cards you own are tied to the car you're using at the time. Got a spare card from racing in an M5? Sorry, you can't use it on any of your other cars. Fuck yourself, give us money. Oh, and if you want vanity items like underglow and tinted nitrous, they're only available via shipments, aka loot crates. They let you earn the shipments by completing these repetitive challenges that also depend on your cars being upgraded, so they can say, oh, but you can unlock via gameplay. The best part is these items are equipables, not purchasables. What this means is that if you use that air suspension kit on your Viper, you can't use it on any other vehicle of yours until you unequip it from your Viper. Neat. The only bright side here is the lack of rubber banding, so if your car's over-leveled enough, you can actually gain a massive lead, so that's reassuring. Now, I've harped on long enough about how fucking awful the system is for so long, only because it's what ruins most of the game for me, and I'm not alone in weeping about it. But that's not to say it's otherwise perfect. Far from it. Payback inherits NFS 2015's awful handling system, but refines it, so cornering and drifting are reasonably predictable now. We're back to drifting consistently being the fastest way around corners. The question here isn't about whether or not it's realistic, let's not kid ourselves, that's not why Carbon was entertaining. It's about whether or not it's fun. And this is a bit more subjective. It comes down to your tolerance for consistency. Sure, if you keep at it long enough and get used to a setup, you can drift near flawlessly even with a keyboard. But it's also entirely possible to lose your shit within the first hour because quite frankly, it's easier to get used to project cars. The tuning is atrocious as well. Here, depending on the class of the vehicle, you're restricted to certain parameters. Oh, you're driving a race spec car? Then I'm afraid you can't adjust your weight balance, or what is presumably your final drive. That's another thing I don't get with this life tuning thing they've got going on. They've simplified gear ratio adjustment to just acceleration and top speed. Meanwhile, off-road spec vehicles have a slider for the assist strength of their power steering. How many people knew what this slider did without having to look it up online? And even then, you'd spend around 5 minutes moving it between extremes trying to figure out just what the fuck it did. And life tuning? What about dyno tuning? Why is it that inside the garage of a master mechanic, the best I can do is adjust my camber? Who thought this shit up? And speaking of decisions so confounding you'd imagine the in charge was having a stroke while making them, let's talk about cops. Cops, the police, the fawns, the bread to the butter of street racing. They're not here. Not in free roam. That's right, you can cause all the limited mayhem you want and no one comes after you. You need to go to specific missions to have the cops chase you and then need to escape. Wait, did I say escape? I meant follow the checkpoints. Follow the checkpoints for a good couple kilometers, and when you're within 500 meters of your destination, the cops will pull out. It doesn't matter how close they are, they just give up. A trait that also seems to have been passed down to the AI. Here's the icing on that rotten cake. You're forced to set every car you buy to a fixed spec. Race, off-road, drift, drag, and runner. The crew, another mediocre execution of a great idea, at least allows you to switch specs for your cars on the fly. Not so here. Bought a race spec Mustang? Sorry, you can't enter drift events, drag races, and can't go play Cop Escape if you're driving it. You need to go out there and buy a vehicle that's specifically dedicated to each and every single one of those events. And to that I say, well, why the fuck not? There are a number of ways this could have been done. Have upgrades targeted at each spec. A bulletproof chassis and reinforced windows for cop chases, special nitrous mods and stage 4 turbochargers, and practical for anything other than drag racing. And give the player the freedom to swap these specialized parts in and out to suit their needs. But no, we got this joke of a system, and no one is laughing. You know what else no one finds amusing? This dumpster fire of a story. Oh, but Austin, you said you didn't mind the stories in Need for Speed. Oh, sure I didn't. Because it wasn't being shoved down my throat every 2 seconds. In this game, everything has to be about these 3 twats. Generic white guy whose personality can be summed up with, I'm best driver. Empowered female who complains about cop chases and her idiot friends while getting involved with cop chases because of her idiot friends. And the whitest black guy you'll ever come across. The story is so in your face, it's hard to ignore it. And since it accompanies every event on offer, you never get to hear the end of it. Funnily enough, 92% of the conversations take place over radios or between car windows, so they didn't have to bother animating conversations. They knew it wasn't worth it. Also, I just said 92% because specific percentages seem more believable. I didn't actually calculate. Moving on, every Need for Speed game I've played, the story was never the end of it. I'd beat the game and then return to buy all the supercars and pimp out my rides. But after beating Payback, I uninstalled it. I was done. I was thoroughly sick of it. And despite the fact that I love racing games as a whole, from Midnight Club to Assetto Corsa, I want nothing to do with this game. The reason being, I have alternatives. What the good ones did so right was filling in a niche well, They offered more customization than any game at the time or since, and the handling model was slick and consistent. But all Payback has going for it is its customization. It's a poor man's The Crew. It's a beggar's Forza, but with more spoilers. Need for Speed Payback drains me. It's a crying shame it ballsed up this bad. You want a racing game recommendation? Comment down below. I'll respond with suggestions of my own, but take my word for it, don't play Payback. All it'll do is make you want to refund both your money and your time. And if you came here expecting me to say something nice about the game, then fine. It has nice UFOs.